Next, I'm going to cover a couple of things just before we go to the recap. One thing I want to say is before you go to the recap or when you're complete with input of materials, you always check your work. I would go through this estimate and I would check each and every line, just looking at it, quickly glancing at it to make sure it's correct, okay? Check your own work. That's very important. Here's another thing. When you're estimating projects, you do a lot of tweaking on these estimates. Here's what I mean. As an example, we input some circuit breakers, or we should have input some circuit breakers in this estimate. I'm going to scroll down to the circuit breaker line here. Now, see where it says breaker termination 1 pole 20? Well, in my opinion, as an estimator, it isn't enough labor just to terminate circuit breakers. Here's what I mean. Line 81 here shows circuit breaker termination 1 pole 20, okay? We input 5 1 pole 20 amp circuit breakers. It shows 1.7, or rather I should say 0.17 hours. Okay, that's about 10 minutes to terminate a circuit breaker. Now, when I'm estimating projects, I don't consider the circuit breaker termination enough time to do that in a live panel. Now, you should have your own policies and understand how you estimate live work, I should say working in live panels. Some companies don't allow you to work live. That means you have to do a shutdown. If you have to do a shutdown, it might have to be done after hours. You see what I'm getting at here? So in this case, I'm just going to go add a couple of hours for working in a live panel. I'm going to do that by just clicking on line 82 here, right below the circuit breaker. Now, it might be a different line for you, but I'm going to click right below circuit breaker termination labor. I'm going to go up to the top here and click add labor. When I do it, opens a box here, and I'm going to just type in labor adder. I like to do it in all capital letters, for live panel work. I'm going to put in a quantity of 1 and put labor hours 2. So what I effectively did when I save this, it'll show 2 hours for working in a live panel. Now there's other things. Here we go. Here's the entry right here. So again, I use the add labor button up here to add labor only to do something. So like I mentioned, when you're working on these estimates, you do a lot of tweaking. Something else you want to be on the lookout for with blueprints is things like firewalls. If you have to penetrate firewalls, then you would have to input fire caulking, which we have in Red Rhino also. I won't show it to you. But what I want to say is you check your work always to make sure it's as accurate as you can tell, and then you go to the recap. So next I'm going to click on the recap button and we'll do that. I'll show you that next. Recap button is at the top right. Just click on it now. Okay, now this screen shows a picture, or I should say shows the recap. The recap is a summary of the estimate. The recap shows a complete breakdown of the estimate. Now, I'm just going to give a brief overview of this. My goal in this is just showing you how this works. But I will say this, that you also tweak the recap, okay? The recap, I think, comes to you always in with the header set the way it is you see here. At the top, this top part is called the header. It shows overhead percent 15, profit percent 10%, and tax percent 7.75%. Now I'm just going to give you some settings just to get through this estimate, but moving forward you'll determine what these settings should be for your own company. Okay, again, I'm going to give a brief overview of this for purpose of just showing you how it works. We're going to do some entry, we're going to do some tweaking, but mostly what I want to show you is where the videos are for this. Critical path to watch these. Hover on video, hover on commercial, because that's what we're doing. Hover on recap complete. See this? Each of these videos shows how to navigate and how to analyze the recap. Very important you watch those videos, okay? Now we're just going to get into this and I'll show you some things. I already explained at the top is the header, and you're going to edit this header in a minute, clicking the Edit Header button. Down the left-hand side is a description of items. See at the top left here, it says material cost, other material cost, total material cost, and so on. This first group right here is for materials, and then it gets into labor. It shows crew composite rate. I'll explain that in a minute. Crew labor hours. Now, what's important is it shows you how many hours you have in your estimate. And then you see columns on the right here. There's a total column and the power and lighting column, okay? So just real quick, a brief look at this shows that material costs, there's a total of $695 worth of materials. Now, yours might be something completely different, but again, the purpose is to show you how to navigate and use this, okay? So your numbers will all be different than this. I'm showing you how to read this report. It's very detailed, very important that you understand it, because what it does is it shows you your cost and it shows you your markup. Now, if I scroll down to the bottom here, it shows the total sale price. When you're all done estimating, or I should say editing this and adding things and tweaking it, it'll come up with a different number here, okay? Now, your number might be close or far off of the 2,802 you see here, but I'm going to make some changes, and I'll explain that next. For now, just follow my instructions in this. Again, I want to make it clear that when you're bidding jobs, you will not necessarily, or you won't use the settings that I'm telling you now, okay? I'm just going to hit this real quick to show you how it works. So to start with, I'm going to click Edit Header here, and it allows me to edit the top part of the recap, the header. Okay, when it stops spinning, it displays the open dialog boxes here, they call them, where you can type in. I'm going to change the overhead percent to 10. Again, don't use these as examples. I'm just showing you how it works. And the profit is already set at 10. And then I'm going to set the tax percent for what we pay in California. It's around 8.75% where I'm at. Make sure you set the sales tax at what you pay for sales tax in your area. Now, I'm going to set this at $60 an hour. And I'm just going to tell you this again. I keep saying this. I'm going to show you this real quick. Don't use these settings. But the way this is set up with $60 in crew composite rate, and 10% overhead, 10% profit. Again, I won't take time to explain it. That's going to end up charging about $72 an hour for labor. Okay. Now, long story short is when the header is set up with an overhead percent and a 10%, that's your markup. And that's how much it marks up everything in the estimate, including the labor. Okay. I'm going to, next you just click Save Header. I won't get into the other parts of this. That's saved for the other videos, but I'm just going to click Save Header, do the same, save the header, and we'll go on. This is covered in the videos, but I just want to explain something to you. We're going to go put in $1,570. That's $1,570 for lighting fixture quotes. Remember, we input some 2x2s and 2x4s, LED, and they have to put in here. I should say they have to be, the price has to be input here. So here's the way to accomplish that. Over on the left, you see quoted material including tags. Now, you see an underlined 0 in the total column and an underlined 0 in the power and lighting column. Now, you can click either one of these, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to click on quoted material including tags, the underlined 0, to add the fixture quote. Click on it now. Watch it pop up. After it pops up, you'll see it lists different items for quotations. So you get the lighting fixtures quoted from your wholesale house, and you come input the number here for that quote. So see where it says fixtures here? I'm going to go over here, and I'm just going to type in 1,570. Okay? Now, don't ever put commas in Red Rhino. Don't ever put commas in Red Rhino. It just doesn't allow them, okay? So put in raw numbers. Now, if you were getting a quote for switchgear, like panels and circuit breakers and transformers, you would put in the quote under switchgear, okay? Let me just say real quick also that if you want, you can change any of these descriptions over here on the left and put in an amount, and when you save it, it will re-alphabetize, okay? I'm just, make sure also then you click Save and Close. Let's do that next. Click Save and Close to save your work. Okay, then when the program flashes, when the screen flashes, you can see the quote in here, but it added sales tax as what you input in your header, okay? So I input a certain number here, it added sales tax and shows that at the total, shows that as the total. Then, of course, when you scroll down, you'll see it added those dollars plus markup to the estimate, okay? See that? So what's cool about this is it does the calculations for you. Now, I'm going to cover labor very briefly here. Down on the left, about 10 lines down, or more. I don't know how many numbers, but a certain line, I should say 10 lines down or so, it says total labor hours, okay? This is something that you want to be familiar with. How many hours are there in this estimate? Now, I told you at the beginning that I tweak things in estimates a lot. So what I would do is I would calculate how many man days that is. Let's say I'm going to use 2 guys to do this job, okay? And they'll burn about, what, 16 hours a day, right? 8-hour work day, 2 guys, 16 hours. So they'll burn 16 hours a day. Okay, well, I have 41 hours in this job, okay? I don't know if that's enough. Let's say I think it should be 2 guys, 3 days. Okay, so if it was 2 guys, 3 days, I need 48 hours in this estimate, but I only have 41.88. So if it was 2 guys, 3 days, again, 16 hours times 3, it's 48 hours. Now I'm going to go add labor because I think it should be more time. Again, you get my drift. You estimate, you do the estimate, then you evaluate it, then you tweak it, okay? I'm going to go right here to other labor hours. See other labor hours on the left? I'm going to go right to the underlined zeros. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to go add 7 hours, okay? That's a little bit more than 48. Now you can put any description here, but you want to make sure, so let me just show you what I would do. I would just say labor adder. You can call it what you want, but what's important is when you look at this, you know what it is. Now you have to put in your labor rate here. It defaults at what the default was. I'm going to put in 60 because that's what we set our header at, and then the number of hours. And again, I'm going to add 7 hours. Type in 7, click Save and Close. Okay, now if we look down here, we show the total labor hours at 48 hours, okay? That's 2 guys, 3 days. Here's another thing. The recap is also where you add your expenses. Expenses like rental equipment, permit fees, okay? Scissors lift rental, maybe trencher rental, fuel. You add expenses in the recap. I'm going to scroll down here. Expenses is about halfway down on the left-hand side. You see expenses and subcontracts. So I want you to go over here and just click on the underlined 0, and it'll open the window. Now, you may or may not remember that I added, or I showed on the takeoff sheet that there would be $75 permit fee. Okay, look, I know that's probably about half or a third what it would actually be, but let's just go plug in $75 under permits. Scroll down here, ways are alphabetized. You see permit, put in 75, and when you're done, click Save and Close. Okay, I caught myself making a mistake there. I changed it to 75. Okay, now when you add $75, you scroll down to the bottom, and it adjusts the total. Now I'm going to scroll back up. I want to explain this. We just added $75 for permit fees, and I want to explain something. The recap is set up for 10% overhead and 10% profit, so it marks up, I told you in the beginning, it marks up everything 10 and 10. So to that point, it's also marking up your expenses, 10% overhead and 10% profit. Again, I will refer back to the videos. I'm scrolling all over the place here. I'll refer back to these videos for commercial for you to watch to understand exactly how to use this, okay? But I wanted to get you through this process. Look how detailed this is. It shows your cost breakdown, okay? It adds the markup that you add here, and it shows you total. Down here is your total. If you went back into your estimate and added more materials, it would adjust the total. It's a great calculator. Now, Red Rhino also has a proposal menu. Let me scroll up here. It has a proposal menu where you can send a proposal. You can create and send a proposal to your customer, okay? That'll be the next video. I do want to say one other thing before I end this video is that this looks like a lot of, this is a huge amount of detail, but when you've done this a few times, your eyes know exactly what they're looking for, okay? You know exactly how to find the labor and the total labor. Now, something else I failed to tell, and it's very important here. Let me scroll down a tiny bit here, though. But see the prime cost? The program shows you what your cost is. In this case, on my estimate, it's $5,471. And then it shows your markup numbers, the 10% overhead, 10% profit. And then if I scroll down a little bit, where it shows total overhead and profit, In my case, it's 1,149. See that? 1,149. That's my profit on this job the way it's set up now. And of course, at the bottom, it shows the total. So two things that's very important is it shows your cost, prime cost, shows your cost of doing the job, and your profit built into the job, okay? Again, these are just for examples. You'll come up with something different, but I just want you to know how it works, okay? Next, we're going to get into the proposal menu. We're going to click on Proposal RCO.